Well, guys, in this video, I am going to be taking a look at the 10 worst teams in 2024 in terms of attendance, counting down from number 10 to number 1. Now, we are into June, and teams are starting to average more fans per game, but we are going to be looking at the 10 worst teams. There are a few slight surprises when it comes to the 10 worst teams with attendance, but really nothing crazy. It's the usual suspects. We will begin with number 10 in terms of the worst attendance. It is the Cincinnati Reds, averaging almost 23,000 fans per game. They've played 32 home games, and I did see a statistic that the Reds are one of the teams that have gained the most fans this year when you compare them to the same time last year. Doesn't really surprise me considering they did have a very exciting season last year, the narrative going into this year. And Cincinnati, I do view it as a baseball town, so I think the Reds will continue up, obviously, into June and July with their attendance, probably finishing around 25,000 per game. The Reds right now with the 10th worst attendance in MLB. They'll probably pass Washington and move up a spot, but we will see. Moving on to number 9, it is the Cleveland Guardians, averaging about 22,500 fans per game. They also have trended up significantly, and the Guardians had a getaway day game a few days ago, and they had 26,000 fans attend it. Now, when it comes to those like Wednesday or Thursday day games, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. I do not remember the last time the Guardians had an attendance that high. So their attendance, with how good they've been this year, about 20 games over 500, it's been a lot better recently, and I do think the Guardians could finish maybe 17th or 18th overall in terms of attendance. Obviously, that's not the best considering where they are in terms of their record, but they're always going to be kind of towards the bottom based on a number of different key factors, some lower demand along with people moving out of Cleveland. Moving on to number 8 in terms of lowest attendance, it is the Minnesota Twins and Target Field. This one is surprising to me. You could still say, well, in April, obviously in Minneapolis, an open-air stadium, it's going to be brutal. But the Twins normally do draw better than this. Right now, they're averaging 20,500 fans per game. So the Guardians are averaging like 2,000 fans more than the Twins at Target Field. They've never really had an issue in terms of drawing at Target Field. They've gotten off to a solid start this year, about 7-8 games above 500. So it is surprising to see the Twins here at number 8 in terms of worst attendance right now. Moving on to number 7, it is the Detroit Tigers and Comerica Park. They're averaging 200 fans less than the Twins, so right around 20,300 per game. I think Comerica Park is just a boring stadium in general. Now, to be fair to Tigers fans, when they were really good, like with Miguel Cabrera, Verlander, they drew pretty well. And they've had a really big lull. They've gone through a rebuild. They're kind of coming out on the other side, although they do have some bad contracts. And right now, it's really not all that surprising that they're below teams like Cleveland and Minnesota, considering both of those teams are well above 500. And Detroit did get off to a nice start this year, but still, there's just not any crazy marquee players. They're still trying to build themselves, so it doesn't really surprise me that they are number 7th right now in terms of worst attendance. Moving on to number 6, it is the Pittsburgh Pirates and PNC Park. So the Pirates, they do enjoy playing at one of the better stadiums in baseball right now, averaging around 19,500 per game. It's not all that surprising considering a bit of a smaller market team, along with the fact that the Pirates have not been good recently. They're improving. They've got 2 really good, young, exciting pitchers. And I have noticed a few times during the weekend, they'll get 32,000, 33,000. So the Pirates, I would imagine, obviously going into the summer, they're going to improve. Will they pass Detroit? I think they probably will, honestly. But right now, they are at number 6 in terms of worst attendance. At number 5, it is the Kansas City Royals, averaging 17,500 per game. Not great here for KC, considering the really nice start they've gotten off to, sitting in second place in the AL Central. Kauffman Stadium, that's been a big talking point. The poor location has really reared its ugly head on Kansas City. And also, Kansas City was horrible last year, so there wasn't a lot of momentum going into this year outside of the Bobby Witt Jr. massive deal. But I would imagine they really need to pick it up in terms of their attendance, considering how good they are. Right now, they would be a wild card team. Of course, this has never been a team that's had a robust attendance history, but they did have a decent number of fans during their 2 World Series appearances almost a decade ago. and they kind of have a complicated situation right now with their new stadium. Where's it going to be? They've hit a lull where they've gotten like 5 or 6 different designs, and they've all gotten denied. So I guess we'll see, but it's very likely to be downtown in Kansas City, maybe on the Kansas side. Moving on to number 4 in terms of worst attendance right now, it is the Chicago White Sox in guaranteed rate field. So there is a ton going against the White Sox right now. They're averaging right around 16K per game. I would imagine they're not going to improve that number at all. I mean, maybe just sheer population density during the summer. They'll have some games during the weekend that get around 28, 29K, but they are legitimately horrible. And due to some weird stipulation with the draft where they're considered a big market team, they cannot draft next year with inside the top 10. So right now they're like 15 and 48, but the highest pick they can get is number 11. And I think they kind of got screwed because, yeah, technically they're in Chicago, which is a big market, but they also share it with the Cubs. So I don't think that really applies to them. The stadium is bad. The farm system is lacking. They've already come out and said everyone is on the table. I would imagine they're going to have a massive fire sale and sell off any of their well-performing players. Right now, it is terrible for the White Sox, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better anytime soon. They're another team that's probably going to be getting a new stadium, although it's a weird situation. We will see. Moving on to the third worst team in terms of MLB attendance, it is the Tampa Bay Rays, averaging just above 15,500 per game. No surprise, the Rays are basically guaranteed to finish at least in the bottom 5, really honestly in the bottom 3 in terms of attendance every year. Although they might pass the White Sox, they've always been a solid team that just struggles to draw. This year they're a little bit worse than they normally are in the AL East, but they're still a respectable club. Tropicana Field, the second worst stadium in MLB, they are trying to get a new one, and there's been some news on that, so I think they will be getting a new stadium right next to Tropicana Field, but there's really not much to say about the Rays. There's just a lack of demand for baseball in that area, and everyone complains about going over the bridge, the location, where St. Petersburg is compared to Tampa Bay in that area, and right now they have the third worst attendance in baseball. Moving on to number 2, it is the Miami Marlins, averaging around 12,500 fans per game. This is another terrible situation for MLB. The ballpark is not old. The Marlins at this point, I mean, they gave up on the season like a month into it. They are not an attractive team to watch, and it does not look like it's getting better for Miami. So they will be selling, and I would imagine their attendance is going to get worse or at least stay the same around 12,000, and they will have the second worst attendance this year. I feel pretty comfortable saying that here now that we are into June, and the fact that the next lowest team is Tampa Bay. They're still averaging about 4,000 more than Miami. So Miami's going to have the second worst attendance this year. And then, of course, the worst, it has to be the Oakland Athletics, averaging under 7,000 fans per game. There's really not much to say about the situation. The team is abandoning the city. And either way, even if they weren't, based on how bad the team is, they were totally gutted. Their payroll is nothing. They did kind of have a decent start, but they've fallen off recently. They're like 14 games under 500, and they play at the decrepit Oakland Coliseum. So, you know what? It's funny. They are going to see an attendance boost when they have that protest, whenever that is. They'll probably get like 35K or so. I'd like to see Mount Davis open one last time, although I doubt we'll actually get that. But yeah, other than Oakland, Miami is going to have the worst attendance this year. In Oakland's situation, with them leaving, obviously the fans are not going to be motivated to go to the games. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.